From cannabis plants hidden in a bedroom to drinking through every film and finally admitting it. Hi, I'm Cartor Raay, starting with Jamie Waylett, better known as Vincent Crabbe, whose off-screen story was darker than anything the films ever put him through. In 2009, police searched his mother's home in London and found 10 cannabis plants growing under tents in his bedroom. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 120 hours of community service when he was 18 years old. After the arrest, he was quietly dropped. There was no announcement or public explanation. He just didn't return for the final 2 films, and Crabbe's storyline was rewritten to account for his absence. Then, in 2011, things got worse. During the London riots, a footage captured Waylett in the middle of the disorder. He was shown holding a petrol bomb and drinking from a stolen bottle of champagne. In 2012, he was jailed for 2 years for violent disorder and handling stolen goods. He was acquitted of intending to use the petrol bomb, but the footage existed. There was no walking it back. He threw away everything for what? Some weed and a riot. He was a kid who got famous too fast and had no one around him who knew how to help. Coverage at the time described him as a withered actor by the age of 22. He hasn't had a significant acting role since. There was no comeback, attempt, or redemption arc played out in public. He just disappeared, and that silence has lasted over a decade. But while Jamie's story ended before he ever understood what he was losing, Rupert Grint lost something a lot more specific. In 2019, the UK tax authority challenged Grint's 2011 to 12 tax return. The dispute was over £4.5 million paid through his company, Clay 10, which managed his business affairs. Grint's team argued the payment was residual income from the Potter films and should be taxed as a capital asset at 10%. Tax authority said it was income, and income gets taxed at up to 52%. After a tribunal hearing in London, Judge Harriet Morgan ruled against him in November 2024 and ordered him to pay £1.8 million. The judge ruled that the money derived substantially the whole of its value from the activities of Mr. Grint, which meant it should be taxed as income rather than capital gains. And that was that. Except this was also not his first time. In 2016, he lost a separate tax case over a £1 million refund he'd claimed by changing accounting dates. A few years later, he went back to court with a different strategy and a much larger amount at stake and lost again. He went twice and lost twice. At some point, you have to ask who was giving him advice. He acted on what his consultants told him. The courts disagreed. That's not the same as cheating. Tax experts who covered the case noted Grint had followed advice from his firm, Clay and Associates. The courts sided with tax authority both times, and the headline, "Magic Can't Save Harry Potter Star from a $2.3 million tax bill," ran across every entertainment and finance outlet simultaneously. Ron Weasley lost £1.8 million over 2 investments, a harsh but unforgettable lesson in the difference between capital gains and income. But if Rupert's controversy came from a courtroom, Emma Watson's arrived from 3 completely different directions across 3 completely different years. In January 2022, Emma reposted a pro-Palestinian solidarity image to her millions of Instagram followers. It included the phrase, "Solidarity is a verb." Israeli officials accused her of anti-Semitism. The debate exploded across platforms immediately. She didn't delete it. She has 60 million people watching her every move, and she posts like she's a private citizen with nothing to lose. Then came the Rowling chapter. In 2020, she had posted a few short sentences supporting trans people, and that made her the face of the Hermione versus Rowling debate, which has kept resurfacing ever since. In 2025, Rowling publicly described the stance taken by celebrities who opposed her as privileged and ignorant. Emma Watson's name has sat at the center of that feud every single time it resurfaced, for 5 straight years over a few sentences she posted in 2020. In 2024, Rowling said she wasn't waiting for apologies from Radcliffe and Watson and suggested that celebrities who had cheered on the transitioning of minors owed apologies to detransitioners and vulnerable women. Watson's name wasn't mentioned, but it was clear who she meant. And then the third thing arrived, and it was the most unexpected one. On 31st July 2024, Emma Watson was caught by a speed camera doing 38 miles per hour in a 30 zone in Oxford, driving her Audi S3. She admitted guilt by post. It might have ended there, but she already had 9 points on her license from 3 previous offenses in October and November 2023, and then again in January 2024. This 4th violation pushed her to 12 points. On the 16th of July, 2025, at High Wycombe Magistrates Court, she was handed a 6-month driving ban and fined £1,044. She didn't attend the hearing, which lasted just 5 minutes, but under 2 years, she ended up with 4 speeding offenses. A speeding fine is a speeding fine. She got banned, she paid. There are real problems in the world. But Emma's controversies kept finding her from the outside. Daniel Radcliffe's second chapter was something he built deliberately from the inside. In 2019, on the Off-Camera show, Daniel Radcliffe opened up about his drinking like never before. He said the constant attention and being watched wherever he went pushed him to drink just to quiet it all. He talked about how it got worse while he was still filming the series. That was a choice, every single part of it. But in 2020, he made a very different kind of choice. When Rowling posted comments about gender identity, he didn't post a tweet or give a soundbite. Instead, he wrote a full piece for the Trevor Project, the queer crisis charity he had supported for years. He affirmed that transgender women are women, that statements suggesting otherwise erase their identity and dignity, and he apologized to fans whose relationship with the books had been hurt by Rowling's words. Everything about that response was deliberate. In 2024, he told The Atlantic that staying silent would have felt like immense cowardice. He wanted young people, especially those who grew up with the books, to know that Rowling's views are not universal in the franchise. He also confirmed that he and Rowling haven't spoken since, calling the situation really sad. 2 words, and yet they captured the cost of standing up the way he did. And then, in the same year, Rowling reignited the feud again after the UK's cast review, and the BBC was once again running headlines with his name in them. He's Harry Potter. He chose principle over peace, and that's literally the whole arc of the character he played. He bit the hand that made him a household name. Without her, he's nothing. But while Radcliffe processed fame through sobriety and conviction, Tom Felton processed it more quietly and for a long time, completely alone. In his memoir, Felton was honest about what the years after Potter looked like. His drinking got heavier over time, mostly out of public view, until the people closest to him sat him down and told him it had to change. He went to rehab and said it was one of the hardest things he's ever had to face and one of the most necessary. When he speaks about it now, he doesn't romanticize it or turn it into a dramatic comeback story. He just says he was in a bad place and needed help. And when the Rowling debate came up in press, he handled it differently from everyone else. He didn't pick a side. He said he wasn't very attuned to the controversy and found it genuinely sad that the franchise had become a political battleground. He remained grateful to Rowling for creating something that connected so many people and acknowledged there was pain on multiple sides and left it there. That answer satisfied nobody, which is almost always the sign that someone is being honest. I'm not attuned to it is just a polished way of saying I don't want to get involved. Pick a side. But if Felton stayed out of the war entirely, Ralph Fiennes walked straight into it. In a New York Times interview reported widely by The Independent, Fiennes called the verbal abuse being directed at Rowling disgusting. He said she was not some uber right-wing fascist, but a woman expressing her view of womanhood, and that he understood where she was coming from. It wasn't a careful hedge or a vague appeal to nuance. It was a direct defense with his name attached to it. The response split quickly. In some corners of the industry, people welcomed him for saying out loud what they felt others were only saying in private. Others pointed out that understanding a position that causes harm to real people still means defending something harmful, no matter how calmly it's framed. Then the internet did what it does. Voldemort defending the author while Harry, Hermione, and Ron had publicly distanced themselves was too much irony to ignore, which is more restraint than Helena Bonham Carter showed because she arrived to the exact same debate and decided one controversy wasn't enough. In November 2022, Helena Bonham Carter gave an interview to The Times and basically lit a match. She called cancel culture a witch hunt, said the way J.K. Rowling was treated was horrendous and a load of bollocks, and insisted Rowling had every right to her opinion. Then, in the same conversation, she turned to Johnny Depp. She said he was completely vindicated after the trial and suggested some people had jumped on the Me Too bandwagon out of jealousy or to get attention. The backlash split and came from 2 directions at once. Trans rights advocates came at her for Rowling. Depp critics came at her for the trial. Supporters of both Rowling and Depp praised her loudly from the other side. A Hollywood Reporter clip summarizing the whole thing went immediately viral. She had dropped herself into 2 separate culture wars in a single sitting and emerged completely unbothered. Finally, someone from this franchise who just said what they actually think without a PR filter on it. She never walked any of it back and remains the single loudest voice from the entire Potter cast on all of it. And then there's Warwick Davis, who was fighting a battle that had nothing to do with ideology and everything to do with money. In 2022, Peter Dinklage, the biggest name in short actor representation thanks to Game of Thrones, publicly criticized Disney's live-action Snow White. He called the use of 7 dwarves backward. Disney listened and announced they would replace the dwarf characters with magical creatures, either CGI or average-sized actors in costumes. It sounded progressive and exactly the kind of move many were expecting. But there was a problem. Davis, who runs Willow Management, the world's largest agency for short actors, spoke out immediately. He said Dinklage's comments and Disney's response overlooked something crucial: short actors were losing jobs they depended on to pay rent. It was about paychecks. When Disney decided dwarves were problematic, they hired Hugh Grant and shrank him digitally or cast average-sized actors in costume. The trained, auditioned short actors who had been waiting for those roles ended up with nothing. He highlighted films like Wonka and Snow White and The Huntsman, where roles written for short actors went to A-list names made to fit with technology. He called it what it was: economic inequality disguised as progress. At the ICCC convention in Nashville in October 2024, he said it bluntly: "It would be wrong to cast someone as a disabled person in a wheelchair with an able-bodied actor, but they do it all the time with short people." That line hit. He's protecting an industry that profits off short actors being a spectacle. There's a reason Dinklage wanted out. He's protecting the livelihoods of real people who are being erased in the name of progressive branding. The debate split the short actor community immediately. Some sided with Dinklage's push for dignity. Many of the working actors agreed with Davis, pointing out that these decisions were threatening their ability to pay their mortgages.